So how do you teach adult learners differently? You have to think about a few things. First, you have to understand, what are adult learners? Adult learners, we're not like normal children, and you have to understand that when adult learners come to your classroom, they're coming with a whole life of background. They're coming with sometimes 10 years of English classes, sometimes 2 years of English classes. Sometimes they've spent 20 years just being on the street learning English. I teach students of multiple ages, adults, from young adults through 80 years old. And I have had everything come to my classroom, from students that had barely grade school education, English background, to students that actually had PhDs from Russia. You have to really take that into consideration when you are thinking about these students. What do they already know? My first order of business is always, where are they coming from? I want to know what they've done and what they're coming from and where are they going. First, you have to understand, because most of these students, the reason they've come this far is they've been very independent. They've been very independent in how they've lived their lives, how they've thought about their education, where are they going, how much do they know that their English, do they think their English is really good, it just needs a tweaking, and it's really bad? Or are there certain fossilized issues that they have? You have to respect that. You have to respect that they're independent. You have to respect that they want to do things their way and find ways to help them be independent in their learning. You also have to find out why they're motivated to showing up again after 20 years. Usually there's a distinct motivation. There's a specific motivation. And you have to find what those are. In my students, my first day of school, that's all we find out about, is where they're coming from, what they're here for, and why. The big thing is why, especially with adult learners. You're not going to reach them if you can't give them some critical, concrete reasons to use this English. And my lessons are always come back to, how did this specific grammar point, this specific pronunciation issue, help them specifically in their usage? I specifically tell my students on a regular basis, when they come up with something new or they're learning something new, they are required to go out and drive their spouses, their children, their significant others crazy in practicing that particular point until it becomes comfortable, something that they can use on a regular basis. And they always go home with something that they could use on a regular basis. The other thing you have to think about with these adult learners, they're not children, right? So you can't sit there and teach them. You need to be there as a facilitator to help them, to work with them. As I tell my students, I'm not so much as your teacher. I'm here to share with you what I know, and you are going to share with me what you know, so that we can come to an understanding of how I can help you with what I know. And you need to give them direction. I usually break my students down into small groups. They're not talked at. They have to work with each other. I insist that they help each other. They're always afraid to ask a question because they think it's dumb. They know this English, they should know it already, and it's a dumb question. I tell them and I give them a safe space. Close the door, say nobody's going to hear this but us, and we are amongst family and friends here. Any question you give me is a good question. Anything you ask is a good thing to ask about, because somebody in the room will have that question in their mind as well. And someone in the room might have an answer for you. So I require that my students work with each other and look for each other. And it's a good thing because now they are doing their own, they're directing their own learning of English. They look to not just pull resource from me, but they pull resources from each other, making them a lot more independent in how they do this. My lessons always bring them together, since I want them to work together as a team. So they find from each other answers to help each other, and then they come together and they build each other up. They encourage each other. They work with each other. We need to do that. They're adults. They're not children. As I tell them, we're going to do the grown-up thing here, not the children's thing. So we understand certain rules. We abide by them. Nobody has to remind you. And we're going to help each other. If we have a question, we can ask our classmate or we can ask the teacher. I try to discourage them from pulling out their cell phones or their devices. I love technology, but in the case of some of these adults, especially if they're intermediate or low level, I do not want them taking out their devices because they have built up a habit in these years of constantly looking up their questions on a tablet or translating them. And that's the worst thing because they have developed a way of not thinking in English. They have developed a way of translating. And that's not going to help them move the next step, which is I tell them, you're here because you want that next step. You know how to survive in English, but now you need that next step, how to think in English, how to make English something that is your own. And the only way I could do that is by taking away your crutch, which is your devices. So their devices are taken away so that now they have to depend on me. They have to depend on each other. They have to pull from us as a resource instead of the crutch. It's important for them. It's important for them to do that because then they start pulling on the knowledge that they actually do have. And they usually have a tremendous amount of knowledge. And that's important for them to do. So here's the big picture. We need to find out what they're about, what they're motivated, what experiences they're bringing to the table, and what do they really need? What do they really need? Is it that they're trying to work with their children? If they're trying to work with their children, I very often give them children's books that they can go home and read with their children because they're helping their children, they're helping themselves using their English. They're helping to make English part of them and not something that is outside of them that they are learning. Because these are not children anymore. These are adults. They are looking for something to be another part of their being. And that's what I'm trying to help them do. So you have to remember, be the facilitator. Don't be the teacher. Don't be didactic in your teaching. Be the one who is sharing, helping them to find their way in this world using their English that they have. As I tell them, I don't expect perfection, but I do expect you to try. I expect you to use whatever English you have and make it work for you. And then I will give you tools to help you get more English to work for you. And that works a lot better than, what you would do in a pedagogy as a child. You don't want that for children. You want these to be adults. And you want to respect, big time respect. My big word for them, respect. Understand where they're coming from and encourage them. Because remember, they're adults. They're embarrassed about being there after 20 years. They're embarrassed about being in a classroom which they think is for children. So encourage them that they are there for a good reason, that they are there for a helpful reason, and that you are there to help them, and that all those years that they have in their background is helpful already, that they can do this, that they can do this. And that is so important. Respect, understanding, and be encouragement. And above all, be flexible. God knows, if you can see that it's something that they got and they're not interested, then go to something that they can use. Okay, so my last statement that I always tell everybody, remember, we are teachers as well as our students, and our students are our teachers. So remember that.